Ceci's our final talk. When we decided to do the conference, the first person I invited to talk was Ceci. I've seen her talk a billion times. I'm friends with her. She's amazing. I'm really excited to have her talk about platform and Slack.
Hi, everyone. I am Ceci. My last name is Stallsmith. I do platform at Slack. Specifically, I run platform marketing. That actually means three things at Slack. It means I run developer marketing, acquiring developers, partner marketing, bringing large partners to market with us like Google or IBM or Salesforce, and then finally getting customers to use the things that our partners and developers build. So that is who I am. And just to give you a little context, I feel really cool and comedian-esque with this microphone. I wish I had a joke. Okay, I love platforms, and how random is that? I'm a psych and English double major from Stanford. I grew up on the East Coast. Where I'm from, going into business means I'm gonna go be in a hedge fund or do iBanking. And then I came out here and basically didn't try to get into tech at all and saw Aaron Levy give a talk while I was at school and was just like, that guy's crazy. I have to work for him. So I found myself at Box as a psych and English double major and raised my hand to take a developer relations job. So I was a really early member of the platform team at Box. I got to do a bunch of different things there. I'm actually going to speak about some of those learnings in this talk. I then went on to Bessemer Venture Partners for a brief amount of time, and that's how I met README. So I actually invested in README while I was there. Bessemer does a lot of investments in developer-esque companies, so learned a lot about that while I was there. And then I hopped to Slack. I've been at Slack for almost 2 years, where I'm on the platform team. So, goal of this talk, let's just be really clear. It's the end of the day. Y'all are probably kind of tired. The point of why I'm here talking to you is to give you some really basic tools around how to bring your platform to market. The idea is you want to grow an ecosystem. How many of you are at startups? Like smallish startups. Okay, so most of you-ish. The idea is you probably haven't made a marketing or a DevRel hire yet. You want to be able to build an ecosystem somewhat. How can you do that without having to make that hire yet? So I'm going to give you practical tips. The number one thing for me to clarify is that I'm really not speaking to a business model like a Stripe or a Twilio, where you just have APIs and you're trying to sell those. I'm speaking to a business model that's like a platform virtuous cycle. So the virtuous cycle starts, excuse that sniff. The virtuous cycle starts by you having a business with customers. Clever was just mentioning this. If you're really trying to build a platform like this, you need to start with users. Developers, partners see the potential, they build on your platform, and then building on your platform ends up causing your users to love your product even more. So that's the kind of platform I'm talking about. To make this extraordinarily obvious for anyone who hasn't used, how many people use Slack? Okay, y'all are gonna already get what I'm about to say, but I built this just in case you don't know what I'm talking about. Slack is a messaging platform, people talk in it all day. Turns out the rest of what you do at work is surrounded in other tools and spread out among them. So with our platform in Slack, we take the tools that you use at work and connect them to your conversations, hence the Slack platform, and we're building an ecosystem. So very, very basic playbook. You haven't made your marketing hire yet or someone to do DevRel, here's what you do. Step one, you just gotta know what you're talking about. This is extremely basic, but it's actually really valuable, and it's something that I have still been learning, and I've been doing more and more marketing in my role. You just have to know who you're trying to talk to. And in this kind of ecosystem, that's actually kind of hard because this is a two-sided market. You have customers on one side and developers on the other. And even within the customer section, if you think about Slack for a second, you have a lot of different kinds of customers. You have admins who care about security. You have end users who just want to get the job done. Think about developers. A developer at SAP building our Concur integration is really different from the developer at Kyber who's building a whole business on top of Slack. Their needs are very different. So being able to tell a story that works for everyone is a pretty significant thing. So on the customer side, if I'm just going to break down Slack's value prop the way that we approached this initially, we just said, okay, what is our basic value? What is the story we're trying to tell? This is like somewhat marketing 101, but for anyone who just wants a primer? Here you go. What's really cool and what we did at Slack that made this possible is we actually seeded our platform before we took the big bet to go all the way, like build out a platform team and get lots of developers working with us. You probably heard Duretti's talk earlier. Duretti actually was on the early Slack platform team. She built our Wunderlist integration. So Slack built its first 80 integrations. The really amazing thing that we found from building the first 80 integrations is that in our NPS scores, it's like customer net promoter scores, integrations were always in the top 3 reasons for why people loved Slack. So we proved the platform value for Slack before we went ahead and made the full jump to like whole hog platform company strategy. This is actually a really brilliant move. When I was in venture capital, I met with so many companies that were like, and then we will be the center of the wheel and everyone will connect to us. And it would be like, who wants to connect to you? Like, why does anyone want to connect to you? No one knows who you are. So in order to be the center of the wheel that everyone connects to, you need to prove that someone cares. So that's what we did initially, and it was a really helpful first step. Second audience that I worry about a lot and think about a lot, and that's doing really well for us, is developers. So when we thought about what is our story, our value to developers, it's really to access people who are at work and want better software. And the narrative that we kind of created out of that is, come and join us. Like, we are building the future of work, and if you want to be part of that revolution, like, we are welcoming you. Come on. So in December of 2015, we decided to launch the platform. I had started 4 months prior. April Underwood was then our head of platform. She's now our VP of product, and she'd basically been taking Slack on a journey to move us from being a platform where we built all the integrations to where everyone else can build all the integrations, because lots of people were kind of hacking it. And we took this exact narrative that I just described and the value props and turned it into marketing language. And through an event a week before Christmas that we somehow got a lot of people to come to. Not advisable. Make your holidays pleasant. So the key thing with marketing and like getting out to a new audience is that you have to say what you said 1,000,000 times before anyone actually hears it. So one of the tactics that we took in like the wake of our platform launch that is something that I kind of championed internally and had so much fun doing, and that it's just paid off again and again and again for us, is that we opened up our public roadmap. This is the like header of the blog post for when we did it. If you just search Slack platform public roadmap, this is one way for us to just show developers, hey, we really trust you. We want you to really trust us. Here's everything that's coming. We're going to maintain this for you. Like, join us. We actually are wanting you to join us in building the future of work. And then you have to say it again and again and again and again. So this is something we call a product marketing brief, that we use at Slack. Every time you're trying to launch a product or do anything that's external facing, we just build a really simple template. In that template, we have the core messaging, the sub messaging. We like to do a no feel do. Those are really helpful. It's sort of like my key to life now. I'll do no feel do's with my husband. What do you want to know on this date? How do you want to feel? What's the ambiance? What should we do? So no feel do's are really helpful. I have the most practical applications in this section of the talk. The first are they're all ones. That is strange. The first is somewhat obvious. I think one of the most important ones is think about how the narrative that you're telling is going to evolve, but also like keep the same seed at the beginning. So if it's a plant, it's like sapling stage versus its middle stage versus its tree stage are kind of different, but they have the same core sentiment to them. Here is the most practical stuff I can give you, but I actually find it extremely valuable. Write a no-feel do for anything you're doing with marketing. Use the jobs to be done framework. We just live and die on this at Slack. I don't know if you've seen the way we do marketing. It's a little bit different from the way you probably hear other corporate marketing. The jobs to be done framework tells you about how to take the story you're telling about a product and turn it into something that people actually can connect with as the job they're trying to do. And then finally, when you bring a blog post before Stuart Butterfield, he reads the blog post and then he says, "This is good. Cut it by 70%. Cut it by 70%. People are busy. They don't want to read your long, annoying blog. They want to read something, just understand the information and walk away. And maybe tweet it. That's it. Okay, finally, this is sort of like the thing that I figured out while I was making this presentation, but there are literally only 3 value props that you could possibly have if you're building a platform company. There are others, but I think these are the most important 3. The first one, this one applies especially well to a company like Docker or Stripe or Twilio. Useful technology. If you use our API, you will be happy with the fact that you used it and find your product to be more useful. The second one is user acquisition. This is what you're doing if you're building on Facebook. I want to access lots and lots of users, so I'm going to go build on a platform where I can acquire lots of users. And the last one is revenue. This is why you build on probably a Salesforce. I want to build a company and make money tomorrow because I want people to pay me for it. That's kind of it. I'm sorry all my numbers turned into ones. They're all the most important, so there you go. After you've figured out how to talk about the stuff you're doing and how to tell people about why it's so valuable, the next thing you're probably going to want to do when you're building an ecosystem is get some developers to work with you. So I have 3 sort of key ways that you can sort of get developers to come follow along and join you. They are very, very different. The first one is just to actually use marketing. So a lot of the time, developers want to work with you because you have useful technology, they can acquire users through you, or they can make money. If you need to get them to do so on like a certain time frame, getting developers involved with you for a launch where you're going to do some marketing is a really, really good way to motivate them. Events are also super useful. People like to meet you. They like to hang out with you. Throwing nice dinners is fun for you, fun for them, not too expensive, and a good way to get people in your good graces. And then finally, this method works somewhat, but it doesn't scale forever, so you have to be really careful about how you use it. So I've used this at Box, I've used this at Slack. Here's one way we did this at Slack recently. When we have new products that launch out of platform, they're not very interesting to talk about if no one can show you how they work. So we do private betas, and we let our partners and developers work with us in those private betas. So we launched this thing called Message Buttons, which is just literally buttons. It was pretty fun to market. It was like, this is a square piece of UI. You will be able to click it. Have you ever used this before? Yes, everyone has touched a button before. But it was pretty revolutionary for Slack because usually it's just a messaging interface. So we partnered with actually 11 companies for this launch. They told the story really well for us, and it was a really cool way for us to work with some new people and motivate them to hit a certain launch date with us. We did this at Box in spades. This is literally a billboard with all the partners that I worked with. It was super fun. We put them on the highway. A lot of these partners were smaller startups, and it was very, very exciting for them. This one probably doesn't scale very well unless you're just paying for a constant billboard. This is an old email, but it's a pretty fun one to look at. We did a dinner. So if you're looking at like a certain ecosystem and you're trying to acquire people from it, at Box we were doing a lot with mobile apps at the time. So every time WWDC rolled around, which is like this exact time frame of year, we would do a special dinner, and we'd have Aaron host it, and we'd invite our top 10 mobile developers, and they just felt really cool and really special. Like you'd rub elbows with the CEO, we'd invite a couple key investors, and everyone enjoyed it. It was not super expensive for us, and everyone expected it. So when I left, we stopped doing it. And this is an email to my old boss being like, hey, what happened to the cool dinner? Which I love. All right, so I just heard the keen IO guy say, developer evangelists can't be salespeople. This is true. You don't want your developer evangelists being salespeople, but what is really helpful if you're literally trying to build a business where you are acquiring developers as part of your value, you need to track them. It's just a fact. So we found at Box, at Slack, and all these different places that if you use the CRM, it just is very valuable for you to be able to know who you are trying to talk to and how they're doing. Especially for anything where you do outbound comms to people about like what's happening. We haven't done this as much as Slack, but if you're doing a lot of versioning stuff, you don't want to hit people up too much, like with the same notifications about how your API is changing. So just being able to track that and manage it is very obvious and very valuable. Here is a very basic, obvious funnel for how the kind of platform like ours and the ones that I've worked with work. So what's cool is it's a developer funnel and switches into a user funnel. And this is what we track at Slack. This is what we track at Box. It's extremely valuable to see how you're doing. So what was cool, so the program I ran at Box was basically mobile integrations with Box. And we called it One Cloud. It doesn't exist anymore. It was very much in the heyday of mobile productivity apps. Do y'all remember when like Sunrise Calendar and like Tempo and Slack and CoTap and like Mailbox were all coming out? It was kind of like a season of exciting mobile productivity products. This was that season. So Aaron Levy is a marketing genius, and he was like, we need to partner with all of them. So the way we did it is we'd look at the top 1,000 productivity apps on the iOS and Android app stores. We'd like figure out contact information for all these companies. And then after we got the first 300, we start figuring out how to like put emails into a mailgun type of product, send them out. If people wanted to talk, we'd get on a phone call, and then we'd like launch these products with us. And it worked really well. We scaled to 1,000 apps. And then to the like, you don't want to be a salesperson, but you do want to track everyone in a sort of sales-like manner. The last thing that I think is really obvious to everyone already, because this is sort of how the developer ecosystem works, is that you just have to be real. People like other normal people. They don't like being sold. They don't like inauthenticity. And so in every role I've been in, the key thing is just being real, being human, talk to people. Like your developers and your partners, they really want to talk with you. Making the time like does sometimes feel like it's too much, but it's just worth it. We have a really big DevRel team at Slack to do this. So here's like really, really practical applications. Again, this is 1, 1, and 1, so that technically should be 3. And finally, moving to the sort of equip section. So you've gone to market, you've figured out how to tell your story, you've acquired some developers. Now that you've acquired them, what do you do? And there's a really, really dangerous pitfall you can enter into if you're not careful here. It is sort of the chasm of despair for a developer ecosystem. So you've figured out, like, I know how to get people to work with me, especially in like the kind of ecosystem I'm talking about, but I can't figure out how to get any customer using their app. That's a really bad situation to get into, and this is where those marketing tactics that I mentioned really won't scale. People are going to see through it within a year and a half, and no one's going to want to work with you. And the people that you did pursue to acquire to get to develop with you are going to be pissed because they put a lot of hours into building an integration with you, and that somehow has not paid off at all. So in order to not enter a chasm of despair, here are some useful tactics. The first one is, if you acquire a lot of developers, they want to talk about you. They're excited, they're investing their actual working hours in building an integration. Let them talk about you. Give them the stuff they need to get out the door, get on Twitter, get onto the internet, and make a loud noise. From a Slack perspective, here are a couple things that we've done. Whenever we do a launch, we actually give a best practices guide out to people to be like, hey, here's how you can do your own PR. Like, here's what you should tweet. Here are the guidelines for how we suggest you blog. We've actually found, this is just like an interesting random finding, that partners who go bigger like 2 days after we do a really big press push somehow get this big bump of adoption and usage and awareness. Because I guess we kind of have already elevated the concept of like, oh, wow, Slack has message buttons. That's really exciting. And everyone's paying attention to us, and they're sort of thinking about the apps on top of us. And then 2 days later, if it's like, and Trello uses message buttons, everyone's like, wow, it's amazing. Look at that. And it's very fun to watch that all happen. Product Hunt's a really good way to do this. So we found that when we launch something with partners, when our partners product hunt the couple days after, they will like jump to the top because everyone's thinking about what we just launched. So that's been really effective. Another thing is just giving people the tools they need to like go out and tell stories about you. I think we're just in a really lucky position at Slack for this, but we see a fair amount of that. The second one can be a little controversial. First of all, this is normally called king-making. I have decided that is sexist, and we will be queen-making from now on. It's also just more fun and reminds everyone of Beyonce, so good. I'm not ready. I don't have very cool like memes and stuff, but I mentioned Beyonce, so ready. Queen making can really vary by product, and you have to be very, very careful about how you do this. We haven't really done this yet at Slack, but the idea is if there is an app or a product that's built on your platform that you have found customers just love using, it drives amazing behavior in your customer base, it's likely that a ton of your customers don't know about that app, but want to know about it. And they should know about it, because if they do know about it, they're going to love it too. So you kind of have to like look around, find those key apps. Usually you're going to look in the data for this. So who's getting the most usage, who's seeing the most like beloved, glowing recommendations. One app in our ecosystem that's seeing this a ton is Donut. Also sounds delicious. But it just does really, really well. Customers love it. And so we found like, wow, we should get more megacorps using Donut because the team at IBM loves them. So it's situations like that where you want to take them and like lift them up extra and do extra internal marketing for them. This happened really in a cool way at Box. At Slack, we see a lot of super organic adoption of our apps. So like, we feature you on the app directory, you're gonna get thousands of installs. At Box, because it was more of a like, well, Slack is also an equally large enterprisey company, but at Box, we were just like thinking in deals all day long, and we'd bring our apps into our deals with us. This is something we're thinking about right now at Slack and how we do it. And actually, we had a number of really, really, really large enterprise deals that were signed with some of our little baby mobile apps. Like Notability, the app in the middle, that's a bunch of guys in a garage in Palo Alto, and they ended up getting signed into Eli Lilly, a huge pharmaceutical company. And I hope I can share this information. It might be proprietary. Don't take a picture of that slide. Really obvious ways to do what I was just saying. Feature your apps, talk about them, let people know about them. Here is what we did for a while with Slack, which is like we wrote a blog about the app directory and how you should look at the apps that are being featured and install them. We're actually rethinking this right now and figuring out ways we can do pieces on, here's the Slack apps for file management, here's the Slack apps for productivity, so that people can read it and figure out what they want to use, just so they're aware that these things exist. So really, really simple. Build marketing kits for your developers. They will use them. It is likely they don't know how to do marketing. That is super important to remember. One of the most important things we did at Box was be like, here is how you literally do PR. So many people use that. Just be like, PR Newswire. You send them an email. It was actually transformative. Show people how to succeed. I forgot to like really dig in on this point, but you have to work in your private betas to make sure they build really awesome stuff. Because if they don't build really awesome stuff, all the people who copy them are going to build really crappy stuff. So if the people you work with initially build awesome stuff, everyone else is going to build awesome stuff. Drive adoptions and queen make, and just queen make in a way that makes you feel in integrity and not sketchy. I feel bad. You were just taking a picture. You can take a picture. Okay, this one's really obvious, but it's also really important, and it's the part of my job that gives me the like glowing, warm heart feeling. It's really important to take the people that you're working with and like the people that you're trying to drive success for and tell their story again. So it's fun. This is a piece that we did almost a year ago now about Guillermo. He started a company called /todo. It's now like this to-do bot on Slack. I just got an email from Guillermo last week, and when he first started working with us, and I met with him a lot then, he was sort of like a roving, traveling developer, just building this random / command on Slack. And I got an email from him last week, and he's now like a 5-person team down in Santa Monica, and they're seeing a ton of usage. And like, I'm so proud of this. Like, I love venture capital. It was so interesting, but one of the hard things about VC is that all day long, you're just like, oh, what a cool founder. You're awesome. No. I love that idea. No, like, no, which is part of the job. You can't give money to everyone. It's really important not to give money to everyone. But what's really fun, and we get to give money to really amazing people like Greg. But one of the really cool things about being an open platform or an ecosystem like the one at Slack or other ones where people are acquiring users through you is that you really just open the door and say yes, as long as people aren't malicious, to like build a business here. Like, you have a really cool idea. I will give you all the tools that you need to succeed. It's really just up to like whether you do those things super well, and if your idea is good enough as to whether you're going to succeed or not. Like, I'm not closing that door. I'm opening that door. Like, this opportunity is real. Come and join us. And telling those success stories is so fun. Polly is another really cool one. Polly the poll bot. They're one of our top 10 apps. One of our other top 10 apps is called Simple Poll. Simple Poll is like a college student in Germany, which is really fun. So what's fun about Polly is like they just see so much traction through us, and they just go tell the story of success with us on our behalf, which is so gracious of them. And one of the last tactics here that I want to be clear on is that you can go get your developers to tell their success stories for you, or you can elicit them. So we're currently in the middle of trying to pull a bunch of success stories out of our ecosystem because we know we have a lot of them. And we have two types of developers. Well, we have like 1 million types of developers, but we have two primary types of developers at Slack. The first one is a developer like Polly or Simple Poll who are building a business on Slack. The second is like you work at a company that uses Slack and you have built a really cool integration with Slack for just your team. So we're trying to tell stories about both of those. And this is just our call for content blog. We've already got a couple awesome stories out of this, and we're going to be publishing those over the next couple months. The last practical tip I will give is when you publish these, don't just publish them on your own blog. Like, everyone who reads your blog knows you and is paying attention to you. Like, go pitch it to someone in press, or go to Stack Overflow and figure out how you can publish something there, or go to some kind of content syndicate, see if you can pay for it, talk to an influencer, see if they'll write something. Get distribution outside of your existing audience so that you can win new developers to work with you. So, oh darn, I didn't have like a wrap-up section for that. Basically, the theme is tell the story again about the success. So that is my whole talk. Thanks so much for coming, y'all. Greg, thank you for this awesome event.